this silk mineral paint has become my go-to paint when I'm doing transfers because I can save myself the step of doing the additional top coat after painting. I was given these little boxes by Anna, who didn't know what to do with them and didn't want to throw them away, so I decided I would add these little feet that I got from Amazon, give it a couple good coats, and then start adding some transfers. I did need 2 solid coats on this, and that was with knowing that I was going to put transfers over it. And these boxes are not super high quality, but it's a shame to throw anything away. And since I know that we're always looking for little boxes for me to embellish, and they sell like crazy whenever we're at market, I decided this would be a good choice. Wanted to be sure to paint both the inside, outside, and underneath all the surfaces of this box. I'm actually going to add some tissue paper decoupage, which we'll get to later, on the inside, but I wanted all of the words to be thoroughly covered up. Once they were completely painted and dry, I decided to use the Icy Paris collection of Prima stamps to add a little bit of a label design. I always like to have words or the stencil or something underneath the transfers when I put them on. I just feel like it adds a lot more texture and dimension. I am not super proficient with the stamps, so this really was a trial and error. I had to do it a couple times, paint over it, and get it back on there. Doing it on tissue paper and then decoupaging the tissue paper on might have been an easier plan, but in the end, I'm actually going to sand most of this off anyway. I'm just looking for a nice light background surface. Now's the time when I actually get to enjoy the fun part, which is adding all of the transfers. I have one of the new botanical transfer sets. These are the mini transfer sets from Redesign with Prima, and I'm just kind of exploring how I want this laid out. Then I'm going to give the box a good sand because, again, I decided that this image was actually overwhelming the transfer on the front, so I wanted to lighten it a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and sand it down, probably about 50% opacity of where it was before, and you can see what the sanded box looks like in comparison to the original stamp. For those of you who love our staging videos, be sure to be on the lookout for this video. We've been hired to stage a plantation in Marion, Florida. We are super excited about it. It's going to be right around 1.6 million. Okay, let's get back to the transfers. So here I'm just going to start layering them. I've decided I'm going to also add some butterflies. So if you haven't used transfers before, it's super easy. You basically peel the back off, lay it down, rub it with a stick. It will stick to the piece you're working on, and then you just peel off that film. Here we're gonna kind of go through all my butterflies. I'm just cutting a little one off that I think will work there and sort of blending it on. You can see that the stamp that I did really is just creating some texture in the background, almost like the transfers are going over something that was repurposed, which it is, but it's my own special way of doing it. I just feel like without the stamp or something in the background, then there's just not enough going on here for me. I like it to be a little busier and have a little bit more detail. So I've got 2 boxes to do. On the first box, I made the flowers really my centerpiece. On this one, I'm going to make my butterfly the centerpiece. So I'm using a bigger butterfly. And you can see I'm trying all different types of flowers to decide what I like best. In the end, I actually chose little tiny berries, which I decided would look more like it was overhanging. The large flowers to me looked like the butterfly was out of scale to the flowers. So here I kind of have it like these are little berries or little tiny buds that are coming down, and the butterfly is like under a tree or a large bush. And to me, the scale felt much better. And the process here really is just sort of trial and error, pulling pieces up, seeing if I like it. I did decide to have another little floral, a different kind coming from the bottom. That way my butterfly was really balanced on the other side. And you can see I'm letting his little wings sort of dip over the edge, so he's wrapping around the box. It was okay that he's slightly bigger. I just have him wrapping around it instead. Once you've peeled back your plastic, be sure to give your entire piece a good rub with your fingers or the plastic that you pulled off. It's called burnishing, and it's going to do a lot to help make sure it stays down all the way. So now I'm moving on to decoupaging the inside of the box. This is tissue paper that we sell on vintagebedesign.com, and this is a 2-ply, so I'm basically pulling apart the ply. I just want the floral top I'll discard the other part, though that would be a great part where you could stamp on it to decoupage. And here I'm just adding some Wise Owl matte finish. This is basically a top coat. Any top coat will do. And you're going to delicately put your paper inside, and I'm using my brush to kind of push it down. The tissue paper is far more delicate than any of the other decoupage papers that we sell. This is not easy to move, and if you spend too much time working on it, it will tear. So just be very gentle, and you can easily see that I can pick the edges off with just the dampness of the top coat, but try not to do that. You will kind of make a mess of it. It's going to be really rough when you're done, so be sure to give it a good sanding at the end as well. Obviously, don't sand it until it's completely dry, and that's actually when I'd recommend taking the bulk of the rest of the tissue paper off. Now, on one of these, I did decide to actually give it a dark wax. When I did the final sand, which I did not videotape, some of my stamp kind of smeared a little bit, I guess, and so the light off-white looked a little smudgy, so I just decided to dark wax and traditional wax, but you can see on this I'm using the stencil brush to add texture around the edge, sort of picture framing the dark wax, and that's a fun technique that you can learn too, and it really can enhance your pieces and make it look more aged. Always remember that when adding a dark wax, less is more. It's easier to continue adding it on in small steps. Now here I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Golden Gemstone Mousse. I tell you, I love this stuff. I'm just adding it across all the edges, and then I'll do a couple little swipes across the top, but to me this really makes all the pieces come alive, and particularly so on the box that has been dark waxed. And of course I'm also adding it to the feet and any of the metal details. Now today we went out to the house in Madison that we'll be staging next week, and we stopped in at this little store and we went inside and were completely blown away. Oh my gosh, the video doesn't do this store justice. It is absolute dreamland. I'm telling you, it would be worth a field trip to go out there. If you're anywhere near Madison, you should totally go visit. And I have some thrifted silver that I'm going to throw some more Dixie Belle Silk Mineral Paint on. Again, this is great. You don't need to do anything when you're done. I am going to sand it, and I am actually going to add some wax over it, but we'll talk about it when we get there. One of the things I did want to highlight is when you've got a lot of grooves like this, you'll notice I'm sort of painting in a swirling motion. When I use my S30 and I'm swirling it like that, it really gets into the crevices. If you are not using a French tip, which is the pointier brush, and you're using a flat brush like this, then that swirling method really gets it into all the crusty little details and makes it shine later. Next up is sanding to bring out all of the details. Yes, this would be an ideal piece since it's metal to wet distress. However, I will say that silk mineral paint is not the best for wet distressing, simply because it does have a built-in top coat, and that makes it a little harder to do. So I'm just using some old sandpaper. It was 220, but it's been used a bunch of times, so it's pretty soft, and sort of brushing on both of these pieces, pulling off some of the paint off the metal. And here's where I decided to wax it. I've got some Fusion Pearl wax. This is going to kind of sit into those little edges and go across the entire piece. It's the same kind of wax you always use, where you brush it on and wipe it off, but it's going to add a little bit of a pearlescent finish to it, which will make it look a little more luxurious than just a simple matte paint. And it's going to go really well with the cottagecore shabby chic look that is super popular right now. I doubt these will make it to market, because these are going to go in the store this week. I doubt they make it to market, but if they do, I know they'll sell quickly there. And moving on to the next project, I just had this tray that, again, I picked up at a thrift store, I believe, for $5.99, and the colors were not particularly appealing. So with the same silk, I just went over it and then gave it a light sand. You'll notice I did not tape off the mirror, and I choose to do it that way because it's actually faster for me not to tape the mirror than to tape the mirror. I'm going to clean it either way, but just with a light spritz of water and then a razor blade, and all of it comes off really, really easily. The only time I struggle at all is when I don't give it enough water, but a little bit of water, a little bit of elbow grease, which really almost no elbow grease, just cleaning up the streaks from the paint that you have on the mirror. So let's go back to that shop and take another look around. The primitive Halloween is right in my heart. I'm sure some of that is Bethany Low, and I may do a drive back there just to pick up some of the fall bottle brush. They had some blow molds that were really great. Just the decor literally from floor to ceiling. And apparently there is a second floor, which I didn't even make it up to. Sue did, but holy cow, this is just complete and total mind-blowing, beautiful home decor. You have to see it. And on this tarnished silver platter, I thought I'd get all sneaky and show you a brand new technique that I have only done once or twice before. And boy, was it a pretty basic fail. I'm going to say I did get some cracking, which is what I wanted. This was going to be a crackle finish, and I need to do some more perfection work on this. I did get 2 points of crackle, and so really I'd planned on adding transfers anyway, but now the whole placement of transfers is about trying to showcase at least one, if not both, of those small sections, so that those are really the centerpiece. I wanted the whole thing to crackle, but we're going to do a good layout here to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative, right? And I am incorporating some pieces that are clearly leftovers, like that's a portion of a red rose that I'm sure part of it went on another project, and that was just the leftovers. This is why I saved my leftovers, because you might think, what am I going to do with that piece? But it ends up being perfect in a layer format. In case you haven't figured it out, my style when it comes to transfers is layer, layer, layer. Whether I'm layering words or stencils or something else, even just layering the stencils themselves on here, that is my sort of mojo and how I like to work. So it does take a little bit more effort when you are stacking stencils on top of, transfers on top of each other, where they stick together. There's a little bit more give, so you do have to work a little bit harder to get that plastic off and to make it stick. And here's always a good point that I realized suddenly that was crooked, and so I was going to try and remove it, and it was stuck. It was going to stay. It ended up down. So I lived with it, and now I'm adding white wax. I want that to go into the corners, the nooks and crannies where there is crackle, and then I'm going to come back with a dark wax and go around the edges of the piece. Can you hear my cat in the background calling for me? He really wants my attention. Anyway, you could see the wax as worked into the crevices, and then the dark wax is off and around the edges. It was exactly what I was looking for. I sanded all of this, which I did not film, but I just sanded it all with a really worn out 220 grit sandpaper, one that had been used quite a bit. So I wanted it to be a little bit rough. I did not want this to look like it had brand new everything on it. Are you killing time? Don't go messing with my heart if you care at all. Don't go wasting what we got, darling, let's ignite. Oh, all I need is an answer. Are you in this for real? Hopefully you have enjoyed my thrift flips, and if you have, please be sure to give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and share with some friends. It would be great to have help building the channel. And leave me a comment about what your favorite piece was, or what you saw in the store that you really wish you had seen in person. If you do come to this little store in Marion, Florida, then be sure to say hi to Cindy, who is the owner, and then Sabrina, who works there. They were incredibly pleasant to talk with today, and it was stunning. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. We will see you again very soon.